Mr. Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I picked up the stick which a visitor had left behind him the night before. It was a fine, thick piece of wood. Just under the head was a broad silver band, nearly an inch across. To James Mortimer MSCS from his friends of the CCH was engraved upon it with the date 1884. "Well, Watson, what do you make of our visitor's stick?" said Holmes, who was seated at the breakfast table. "Since we have been so unfortunate as to miss him and have no notion of his errand, let me hear you reconstruct the man by an examination of it." "I think," said I, following as far as I could the methods of my companion, "that Dr. Mortimer is a successful elderly medical man, well esteemed, since those who know him give him this mark of their appreciation." "Good," said Holmes. "Excellent. I think it's also the probability is in favor of his being a country practitioner who does a great deal of his visiting on foot." "Why so?" "Because this stick, though originally a very handsome one, has been so knocked about that I can hardly imagine a town practitioner carrying it. The thick iron ferrule is worn down, so it is evident that he has done a great amount of working with it." "Perfectly sound," said Holmes. "And then again there is the friends of the CCH. I should guess that to be the something hunt, the local hunt to whose members he has possibly given some surgical assistance, and which has made him a small presentation in return." "Really, Watson, you excel yourself," said Holmes, pushing back his chair. He now took the stick from my hands and examined it for a few minutes with his naked eyes. Then, with an expression of interest, he laid down his cigarette and, carrying the cane to the window, he looked over it again with a convex lens. "There is certainly one or two indications upon the stick. It gives us the basis for several deductions," said he, returning to his favorite corner of the city. "Has anything escaped me?" I asked with some self-importance. "I trust that there is nothing of the consequence which I have overlooked." "I am afraid, my dear Watson, that most of your conclusions were erroneous. Not that you were entirely wrong in this instance. The man is certainly a country practitioner, and he works a good deal." "Then I was right?" "To that extent. But that was all." No, my dear Watson, not all. By no means all. I would suggest, for example, that a presentation to a doctor is more likely to come from a hospital than from a hunt. And when the initials CC are placed before that hospital, the words Charing Cross very naturally suggest themselves." "Well then, supposing that CCH does stand for Charing Cross Hospital, what further inferences may we draw?" "Do none suggest themselves? You know my methods. Apply them." "I think we might venture a little further than this. Look at it in this light. On what occasion would it be most probable that such a presentation would be made? Obviously at the moment when Dr. Mortimer withdrew from the service of the hospital in order to start a practice for himself. It certainly seems probable. You will also agree that he could not have been on the staff of the hospital, since only a man well established in London practice could hold such a position, and such a one would not drift into the country. If he was in the hospital and yet not on the staff, what was he then? He could have been a house surgeon, a little more than a senior student, and he left 5 years ago. The date is on the stick. So your grave, middle-aged family practitioner vanishes into thin air, my dear Watson, and there emerges a young fellow under 30, amiable, unambitious, absent-minded, and the possessor of a favorite dog." I laughed incredulously as Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his seat. "As to the latter part, I have no means of checking you," said I. "But at least it is not difficult to find out a few particulars about the man's age and professional career. From my medical shelf, I took down the medical directory and turned up the name. There were several Mortimers, but only one who could bear visitor. I read his record aloud. "Mortimer James, MRCS 1882, Grimpen, Dartmoor, Devon. House surgeon from 1882 to 1884. at Charing Cross Hospital, medical officer for the parishes of Grimpen, Thorsley and High Barrow. A country doctor is very astutely observed. I think that I am fairly justified in my inferences. As to adjectives, I said, if I remember right, amiable, unambitious, and absent-minded. It is my experience that only an amiable man in this world who receives testimonials, only an unambitious man who abandons a London career for the country, and only an absent-minded one who leaves his stick and not his visiting card after waiting an hour in your room, has been in the habit of carrying the stick behind in the master. Being a heavy stick, the dog has held it tightly by the middle, and the marks of the stick are very plainly visible. The dog's jaws shown in the space between these marks is too broad in my opinion for a terrier, and not broad enough for a mastiff. It may have been, yes, by Jove, it's a curly-haired spaniel. He has risen and paced the room as he spoke. Now he halted in the recess of the window. There was such a ring of conviction in his voice that I glanced up in surprise. My dear fellow, how can you possibly be so sure of that? For the simple reason that I see the dog himself on our very doorstep, and there is the ring of its owner. Don't move, I beg you, Watson. He is a professional brother of yours, and your presence may be of assistance to me. Now is the dramatic moment of fate, Watson, when you hear a step upon the stair which is walking into your life, and you know not whether for good or ill. What does Dr. James Mortimer, the man of science, ask of Sherlock Holmes, the specialist in crime? Come in. Holmes is excited. He has just seen the dog at the front door. He asks Watson to stay, and they both wait for Dr. Mortimer to come up. Our visitor was a very tall, thin man with a long nose like a beak, which jutted out between two keen grey eyes set closely together and sparkling brightly from behind a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He was clad in a professional but rather slovenly fashion, for his frock coat was dingy and his trousers frayed. Though young, his long back was already bowed, and he worked with a forward thrust of his head and a general air of peering benevolence. As he entered, his eyes fell upon the stick in Holmes' hand, and he ran towards it with an exclamation of joy. "I am so very glad," said he. "I am not sure whether I had left it here or in the shipping office. I would not lose that stick for the world." "A presentation, I see," said Holmes. "Yes, sir. From Charing Cross Hospital, from one or two friends there on the occasion of my marriage." Dear, that's bad," said Holmes, shaking his head. Dr. Mortimer blinked through his glasses in mild astonishment. "Why was it bad?" "Only that you have disarranged our little deductions. You're married, you say, sir?" "Yes, I married, and so left the hospital, and with it all the hopes of a consulting practice. It was necessary to make a home of my own." Come, we're not so far wrong after all," said Holmes. "I presume that it is Mr. Sherlock Holmes whom I am addressing, and not—" "No, this is my friend, Dr. Watson." "Glad to meet you, sir. I have heard your name mentioned in connection with that of your friend." Sherlock Holmes waved a strange visitor into a chair. "I presume, sir," said he at last, "that it was not merely for the purpose of examining my skull that you have done me the honor to call here last night and again today." "No, sir, no, though I am happy to have the opportunity of doing that as well. I came to you, Mr. Holmes, because I recognize that I am myself an unpractical man, and because I am suddenly confronted with a most serious and extraordinary problem. As a practical man of affairs, it is acknowledged that you stand alone." "I think, Dr. Mortimer," Holmes interrupted, "you would do wisely if, without more ado, you tell me plainly what the exact nature of the problem is in which you demand my assistance." Please like, share and comment on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.